Hey, everybody, it's Ryan. Thanks for downloading today's show. And just a reminder, as always, Wake Up War Chant is brought to you by our friends at For the Table, Madison Social, Central and Township, in the heart of College Town. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, from Tallahassee to Thomasville and from coast to Atlantic coast, it's time to Wake Up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, and it's a very happy Friday morning, December the 8th, to you and yours. The conclusion of 2 really busy weeks, but it's all behind us now. Florida State has a new head coach. They're playing a basketball game on Sunday, and that head coach that they hired is hitting the recruiting trail. And we've got plenty of coverage on both of those ends for you, including our old Michael Langston's going to join us in the next segment. And then later on, our friend Adrian Crawford, who, of course, has covered Florida State basketball and given us some analysis and insight for a very long time, is going to be joining us as well. Drew Hickens also on the phone line. We're going to say hi to him in just a second. But first of all, thanks so much for waking up with us here on 97.9 ESPN Radio at 6 a.m. WTSM app, TuneIn Radio app, ESPNTallahassee.com, all those different streaming places. We thank you for using each and every one of them. Podcast, iTunes, Podcast Republic, WarChantRadio.com, the TuneIn Radio app as well, YouTube, however, whenever. Thanks so much for using it. Rate and subscribe if you can and you like the show. It always helps us out. And by the way, we actually had somebody who asked how you rate it on iTunes, and that's just go to the podcast page. Just go to your iTunes store, search Wake Up War Chant, find our page, and leave a review right there. We actually had a question about that this week, so hope I can give a little bit of a better answer to that. And of course, if you want to talk back to the show like that man did, radio@warchant.com is your email address, or @WakeUpWarChant is your Twitter account to do so. But as I said, my name's Ryan Kelly. Drew Hickens on the other phone line today. Drew, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, and I thought today, because for the first time in a while, yesterday was a rather slow news day in the world of Florida State news outside of recruiting, and we're going to get to that with Michael in a second. But today, because there's been so much over the last couple weeks, and because we have usually on any given day about 43 to 44 minutes of content to fit in, and most of that's been dedicated to Jimbo Fisher, Willie Taggart talk. There's been so much of that to get to. There's been so much to digest that a couple big stories have slipped through our cracks over the last couple weeks. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask 2 questions that are original and brand new, and 2 questions that you're going to hear later on in the show, one to Michael Langston and one to Adrian Crawford, since we already put those interviews in the can just a little bit earlier. And my first question is this, and it pertains to Florida State football. Are you surprised that Derwin James is sitting out the bowl game? Of course, it was announced that he was going to go pro. He's going to be sitting out this bowl game. There are already reports that he's out training for the draft. I don't think anybody's surprised that he would declare for the draft, but are you a little shocked, Drew, that he's going to sit out the bowl game?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm pretty surprised that he's not playing in that bowl game. Just knowing Derwin and his love for Florida State, and all things considered, I understand the situation. And for the record, I think he's making the right call in not playing, because there's no need to risk millions of dollars for the Independence Bowl. I totally think it's the right move. But that being said, no, I mean, you heard him a few weeks ago say that he laughed at the fact that somebody asked him if he'd play in a bowl game. And so, to be honest with you, when the reports came out that he wasn't, I was a little surprised.
I think you have to look at it this way. It was a meaningless moment and a meaningless game a year ago that ended up costing Derwin James his entire season. And he can't afford to take any chances in the Independence Bowl against a Southern Miss team that all indications and all metrics say you should probably beat. So I really don't hold this against him at all. And I think, especially for maybe some folks in the Florida State fan base who felt a little upset at Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette, as a lot of people nationally did last year when they sat out of their bowl games. I mean, the Sun Bowl isn't that much more prestigious than the Independence Bowl. The Citrus Bowl may be a little bit more than those two, sure, but at the end of the day, they're not a playoff. They don't mean anything. They're not capping off any sort of banner-raising season. I didn't hold it against those two now, just like I don't hold it against Derwin James as he's doing this. It's a matter of being smart and protecting your investment, which is yourself and your body that you've worked really hard and you've conditioned to get into this moment.
Look, if you're not in the New Year's Six of the playoff and you're a projected first-round pick, I mean, it's probably the right call. Maybe it'll upset some fans, but they'll get over it, I promise. And Derwin here, he's making the right call. It's what's best for him. his family. I'm honestly glad he did it, because that would have been devastating to see something happen to him in that game.
Next question, it also pertains to Florida State football. Willie Taggart hitting the recruiting trail with some of his assistant coaches, locking down a couple guys who were already committed to the Noles, including, of course, Tallahassee's own Amari Gaynor, who said yesterday on Twitter that he's 1,000% committed to Florida State. Just how high is the ceiling for this Florida State recruiting class, Drew?
I think this will be a top 10 class. I think top 5 is probably a little bit of a stretch at this point, unless you get some bigger fish to flip that, maybe we're not seeing. But I still think this is a top 10 class. And here's the other thing here too. Say, it's not the class that you hope it would be. That's fine, because you've recruited so well in the past that missing out on one is not gonna hurt you too bad. You'll be just fine either way. There's a lot of really good talent on that roster already. That being said, I think realistically, top 10 class is still very much in play. And
let's also be honest here. You mentioned it perfectly. One quote-unquote bad class is not going to hurt Florida State because of the roster that they have right now. And let's face it, what would a bad class be considered? It'd be still probably a top 25 class. I'd say probably even more a top 15, top 20. That's just not up to the standards that Florida State's been recruiting at, but it's still a very, very high standard. So I tend to agree with you. I think it's somewhere in the top 20 or top 10. Willie Taggart said it himself. There are a lot of guys who would love to come play for Florida State, and there are a couple people, and this is not a shot on the last regime, who, of course, I think we all know could recruit very well and at a high level, but not every coach is for everybody. And I think the idea of having a new coach, especially one that seems to resonate with kids very, very well, is going to get Willie Taggart into some living rooms that maybe Florida State couldn't get in before, including, of course, Justin Fields, who Michael Langston said, and you're going to hear it a little bit later on in the show, he fully expects to visit sometime over the next 48 hours.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what kind of guys that Florida State was really on the outside looking in, where Taggart can go in there and really make that difference, make that next step, see if Florida State can really get in the hunt on some of these kids. Now, as the Justin Fields go, I really don't expect him to flip from Georgia, but don't get me wrong. Taggart's going to take his best shot. He's going to shoot his shot at Justin Fields. And, I think there's a chance there. Don't underestimate Willie Taggart. He's an elite recruiter, and like you said, he's very relatable to these young kids, something that, as an elite of a recruiter as Jimbo was, he just wasn't, these kids didn't relate a whole lot to him. The people who wanted to play for Jimbo was because they wanted to play for one of the 4 active coaches who have a national title. His pedigree was really what called people more. But now you got a guy in Taggart who really is going to be able to go in these living rooms and just have a whole different dynamic.
Next question. Let's flip the subject, shall we? Florida State basketball. Big win on Monday. We talked a little bit about it, but we haven't been able to talk about the season as a whole. How much have your expectations shifted for the FSU basketball team?
Not much yet. We're only 8 games in. Florida just lost to Loyola Chicago at home, so they're reeling a little bit right now. That being said, I do think it's a better Florida State team than I anticipated, and I think that there's still a lot of room for them to improve, and I think they could do a lot of good things this year. But I said before the season started, and I'll still stand by it, it's a tournament team. They'll make the tournament, but unless they got some ridiculously good draw, I wouldn't expect them to make some super deep run. They're not going to win the ACC or anything like that, but probably finish in the top 6 of the ACC, top 8, worst case, and make the tournament. And that's kind of what I expect.
See, my initial projection was top 8 of the ACC, and I think it's moved somewhere to around 5th place. 4th, 5th place, I think, is the absolute ceiling for this team. And I think that's a function of 2 things. I think Florida State's a little bit better than I thought they were going to be, even though I always thought they were going to be a tournament team. And I think, on the other hand, the ACC maybe isn't as strong as I thought it was going to be. The bottom half, or the bottom third of the ACC doesn't appear to be as tough as it was a year ago. Of course, Georgia Tech doesn't look all that hot. Wake Forest doesn't look all that great. Louisville, who was projected to be a top-tier team before all the Pitino stuff happened, looks like they're very beatable, and even Notre Dame has some flaws. So I tend to think that Florida State can make a little bit of a run, and it's not necessarily all because of them. I think part of it's because what's happening to everybody else.
Absolutely, and you look at that schedule, and we've talked about it, the out-of-conference is very winnable for them, and there's a good chance they could go undefeated in out-of-conference play. So that's a big resume booster, and they just had that big resume booster win at Florida, regardless of how they're looking right now. That's a big-time win. You got Oklahoma State coming up. Interested to see how they look there. Get past Oklahoma State. This thing could get rolling. You got a tough slate coming up in AC when ACC play starts. But if you can snag 2 of those games, those are big-time games. You got the Dukes and and the Louisvilles and whatnot. And so I'm interested to see what this team can do. All we know is this team is fun to watch, regardless of how the season goes. They're a lot of fun.
Finally, last question doesn't pertain to Florida State, but it does pertain to two of the other big hires in college football this week, and that's Chad Morris and now Jeremy Pruitt with the Tennessee Volunteers. So here comes the question. Tennessee maybe not in the better spot as a program right now, but certainly has the easier draw being in the East. Arkansas, not quite the train wreck that Tennessee is at the moment, even though they did lose Jeff Long, their AD, but it's still the SEC West, and it is a 5-car pileup. So here comes the question. Who's more successful at their job? Is it Chad Morris or is it Jeremy Pruitt?
I think, let me put it this way. First off, I like both hires for both programs. I think they're both good fits. That being said, I really, really like Chad Morris. I think that he will be the more sustainable, more, on for par coach. I expect him to get them to 8-9 wins, 7-8 wins, stuff like that. I think he'll be very consistent. I think Jeremy Pruitt's ceiling, though, at Tennessee is a little higher than Chad Morris is at Arkansas. So it really depends. Are you judging the success on consistency or who has a better chance to potentially win the East at some point? If it's potentially win the East, because obviously Arkansas being in the West, I would say Pruitt is probably in better line to be successful here because Tennessee is also a better program, as much of a train wreck as they've looked the last couple of weeks. It's a better job. And I really, really like the Chad Morris hire, but again, I'll go say it's a risky pick, but I think Jeremy Pruitt here has a higher ceiling than Morris does.
And I think that's the eternal question in college football. Would you rather be Mark Richt, who stayed at one program for a long time and sustained a lot of success, or would you rather be Gene Chizik, who won a national title and is chased off in 3 to 4 years? It's the idea of, I think you hit the nail right on the head. The ceiling's a lot higher with Jeremy Pruitt as a coach. But first of all, we have not seen him as a head coach. We also haven't seen Chad Morris as a head coach in the Power 5. But I'm a little upset that this college football season's already over because some of these coaching moves and things that have happened, I want to watch some more. And a lot of these guys you're not going to see in bowl season. You are ever going to see Jeremy Pruitt on the sidelines for the Crimson Tide. So it'll be anxious. I'm anxious to see if he pulls a Mark Richt at Florida State where he's got one foot out the door. But Saban usually doesn't let that happen. And the last guy who did, he kind of sent him packing before the playoff, and that was Lane Kiffin last year.
Right, yeah. It's really interesting. And honestly, it makes for a more interesting spring. I'm really interested to see how that Florida State offense looks in the spring under Willie Taggart and how we're going to utilize some of those athletes who, let's face it, elite-level athletes who a lot of them haven't made the impact that they should. And you can point fingers all you want, and maybe it's on them, maybe it's on the coaching scheme and whatnot, but there's not going to be much excuses left for them, especially with a term like lethal simplicity being thrown out there. So I'm really interested to see guys like, Keith Gavin, who just hasn't made a ton of an impact, and DJ Matthews and maybe even Kalen Laybourne, a guy who redshirted this year, who could really make an impact in the backfield. I really can't wait to see how Willie Taggart tackles this thing.
I'm with you. It's going to be an interesting spring for Florida State. It's going to be an interesting spring for a lot of programs. Drew, thanks so much for hopping on with us, man. Always appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Michael Langston and then Adrian Crawford, all on this packed edition of Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Hey, if you're planning on going to the Tucker Center this weekend, why don't you visit our friends at Madso on Sunday before you head over to the game for the best brunch in town or anywhere in our For the Table family, Madison Social Central Township, or even the Soto Baking Company out there in Midtown, if maybe a little breakfast pastry is more your thing. So the Taggart train has already come and gone out of Tallahassee. It's out on the road recruiting. And I thought today might be a good day now that some of this dust is settled, at least in terms of the who they're hiring front to the who are they signing front. And, of course, like I said, plenty of guys hitting the road with head coach Willie Taggart trying to salvage this recruiting class. Nobody knows that better than your senior recruiting analyst of 4chant.com, Mr. Michael Langston, who joins us on the phone line. And, Michael, let's get right to it. March me through Willie Taggart's last 24 hours.
I would say it's pretty hectic. He's probably drinking a lot of coffee or Mountain Dew or whatever keeps you up, and And, I mean, the guy's just, pure energy, but there's a lot happened. And, he's definitely already hitting the road hard. Visited, Amari Gaynor on the same day he was hired, solidified that recruitment. And Amari shut down his recruitment that he's signing with FSU. And, now he's on the road. He's in Georgia, so far, today, which is, or I guess should say Thursday, he's out there. And, he stopped to see, he stopped to see offensive lineman Christian Armstrong and offensive lineman Christian Meadows. And he also stopped to see Trey Hill, another major target for FSU. I expect them to see also defensive tackle Robert Cooper, who's committed to FSU, probably kind of the same thing. They want to lock him down like they did Amari. And then on Friday, I expect him to go see the big guy, which is quarterback Justin Fields.
Of course, a guy that we knew was only going to be in play if this really happened. And I'll ask you, Michael, because now that you've brought him up, you knew we were going to talk about him a bit. How big of a possibility is it that Willie Taggart can flip Justin Fields to Florida State?
Well, I'd say right now, I think he would sign with Georgia. It doesn't appear that he's going to be signing early. I don't think there's not like an indication of there's anything wrong. It's just that he just doesn't want to sign early. He wants to do it, later on, maybe just enroll early at a school of choice, which looks like Georgia right now. But I tell you, that's the one coach they probably did not want to see as far as Georgia is Willie Taggart, because I have heard through different people that he really likes Taggart personally. He likes his personality and his culture that he builds wherever he goes, and he's very high on his offense. He likes how he would kind of fit into there, and it's part of the reason why the family agreed to take an in-home, let him come in for an in-home visit. And so I certainly think that Justin will listen, and now we wait to see what type of impact he will make being around Willie in person, because to my knowledge they've talked, but nothing like what we're going to see with an in-home visit.
And I think it's also worth noting, as far as Georgia, though, with a lot of these teams coming back into play, hey, that a Fromm kid that everybody wasn't so sure about, well, he just got named SEC Freshman of the Year. So even if you are a very, very talented guy, which, let's face it, we all think Fields has all the makings of a superstar, it's going to be hard to go in and take playing time away from him to where you'd probably at least be sitting another 2 years behind him.
Yeah, and that's a possibility. I don't think Justin really cares who's in front of him. Obviously, that I don't care who you are. I mean, that's going to affect you in some way. But I think the main thing here with Florida State is just the draw of what how Willie connects to quarterbacks. Probably sounds familiar. A lot of people would the job that Jimbo Fisher does, but it's kind of in a different way. Just he knows what's going through their mind. He knows what they're thinking. He's played the position, obviously, at Bradenton Manatee and Western Kentucky in college. So he knows what they're going through. Now, he can measure up and say, yeah, I know what you're going through, and I know what you see on this and that. And so that's why he connects so well with quarterbacks, and that's why this one's kind of interesting, just to see, what the reaction would be from Justin, to the fit there. And I think the goal really on this visit for him is, one, to build, just the connection with him and trust with him, but also, and two, to win over and get Justin to come over for an official visit. I think if he did those two things, I think Taggart's kind of got what he wanted to get out of the visit. I think that's kind of the pinpoint of it, and kind of what they're looking to get out of it.
If we're already talking about this first trip and the idea that a lot of the visits that he's been taking, outside of course, you mentioned it, a couple notable names, a lot of the trips that Willie Taggart's been making on this visit are to guys who are already committed, and just kind of to lock them down, to introduce himself, say, we want you to stay here, let's move forward together. But as far as the new guys that he's going towards, I don't think you're exactly going to flip somebody in just a matter of 2 weeks to sign in the early signing period. How much of Willie Taggart's job is just to say, hey, don't sign in this early signing period. Give us some time to get to know each other, talk a little bit, and hopefully you'll consider us. How much of it is just getting guys not to sign in a couple weeks?
I think that's a big thing, but I think not so much not to sign, but just to send this direct message, which is give us a chance. We won't let you down. Give us a chance, and we will show you what Florida State's all about and what my vision is about and what I'm going to bring to Florida State and how you are part of that vision. I think that's what he's trying to get to all these kids that are possibly up for, signing early. And then with the kids that are, already committed that we talked about, I mean, there's a lot more that they'll visit, a lot more in Florida, probably next week. And, but I think the vision there is just to say, we're going to build something special, your family. Let's get this done and let's get everyone board so we can get everyone on the same page. But for the kids that are uncommitted or committed to other schools, I think the basic message is give us a chance. I promise you'll like what you see. I think that's kind of what they're looking to get out of that.
How much do you think kids respond to when Willie Taggart rolls in? And I talked with Ira yesterday, and of course he has that story up on warchant.com right now about the 15 things we learned during Willie's introduction. And one of them was that right now recruiting is priority number one. How much do you think it means to a recruit that this guy comes in? And I get it. It's somewhat of its lip service when you're going through a new head coach or a new coaching search, that the guy comes in and says, we're going to get the best players, we're going to get the best athletes, but that he puts so much emphasis on, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to get as many guys as I possibly can right now to save the class. He didn't just talk in broad generalities, and he did say a couple of those things of, we're going to find the best and brightest in the classroom and on the field. Everybody says that stuff. But the fact that he specifically said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to salvage this recruiting class, does that resonate with kids at all? Or do most of them already know Willie Taggart's reputation for going out there, being a grinder and getting into guys' rooms and in their homes and really making a connection?
Well, I think just a lot of these kids are so enamored by him that, they love his, persona, what comes with him, the culture that comes with him. And it's not just football when you talk with him. I've talked to several recruits that already got in-home visits, and they're basically like, there's football talk, but it's a lot of life stuff in general of his life goals and just his mentality and his culture of what he's going to build there. And that's important to kids of, what kind of family am I going into? And I think, to say to Florida kids, it's at all time. It's incredibly high. It's incredible, even in the Southeast, of kids that are so enamored by this hire, that they want to, certainly consider FSU and even more so probably get over there and, want to visit and see what it's about, because he brings such a persona with him, as far as the attraction. He was the one guy that I was always told, like, kids always talked about, even back 2 years, they would tell me, kids that were now seniors, they would tell me, man, I really wish Willie Taggart coached in the Southeast at a big-time school. That's a school I'd really want to check out because I like his vision. I like everything he's talking about. And, he's a guy that I can relate to and I can connect with. And a lot of these guys were recruited, but probably not recruited hard because, they didn't really believe that they're going to go all the way to Oregon, or they were much better in playing for a school like South Florida, compared to, other teams that are going after them. So I think that stuff resonates with a lot of kids. And I think everything you're probably hearing out there as far as how much kids like him and how much kids are, how interested in the excitement level, I think it's pretty legit right now.
One final question before we wrap things up, Michael. Well, actually two more, because I've got one I'm somewhat curious about. How rare is it, and I understand the situation that Florida State's in where they've still got a coach, or at least a head coach in waiting, preparing to prep his team for a bowl game. As a matter of fact, we're going to hear from Odell Haggins today at a 1 o'clock press conference. But I understand that's a little unique of a situation. But seeing some of the photos of guys in home visits with Willie Taggart over the last 24 hours, a lot of people don't expect Charles Kelly to be on this staff next year. A lot of people don't expect Rick Trickett to be on this staff next year. Now, one of those could be a surprise, but a lot of people don't expect those two or Lawrence Stassi, but yet they're in those photos, in those in-home visits with Willie Taggart. Mm-hmm. Is this an idea of he's trying to evaluate who they are as recruiters and, of course, also evaluate who they are on the practice field as coaches? Or is this just guys doing their job?
Well, absolutely. I think it's, an evaluation period just in case you don't get who, you maybe in his mind he thinks is coming. And it's an evaluation of what they'll do and how they are in recruiting and just, his connection level, if that fits his vision of, what he wants from his recruiters. And obviously when they start practicing, he'll be able to see, their coaching style, if that fits what he's going to do. So I think it's kind of a mixture of both. But also these guys are coaching, for their lives or their careers at FSU. So they're going to do their jobs. And I tell people, like, they always freak out when they see these pictures, and it's like this is part of the process, guys. Like, this is part of the process when you coach there. It's better not having anybody coaching there. Like, you need your guys there, because there's no telling what can happen. I mean, there's no telling if, he falls in love with a guy that he likes, and something falls through, that he might take these guys. But, we just don't know. But they're also coaching for whatever the next position is if they're not at FSU. Other coaches see that. He can recommend them to these guys. He say, hey, this guy's pretty good. Doesn't fit what I do, but I think he might want to give him a look. So it's kind of a mixture of a lot of things together.
Before we wrap it all up, what's the ceiling for Florida State's recruiting class in 2018?
Well, I think, I've had a lot of people ask me that, just, how you think they're going to finish. And I think top 10 is certainly realistic. It's very challenging, because you're talking about, you're not going to have your full staff until probably after the Oregon Bowl, or maybe even all the way to FSU's bowl. So you're basically going to have 1 month, or a little over a month, or a month and a half to get all your things together. But just the excitement, I mean, they're literally going to have to turn kids away, in my opinion, because there's going to be such excitement once you get everyone in place, and there's going to be a ton of visits, and they're going to have some big visit weekends, especially in January. I mean, it's going to be large, and they're basically going to have to turn some kids away. I think you got a lot of kids. You got two that are committed to Oregon. We've already talked about Warren Thompson, Isaiah Bolden. I think you got a good shot at flipping those kids. So I think there's going to be a lot of kids in there that we haven't talked about, that they're in Florida or in the Southeast. They're going to want to check FSU out. They're going to be very intrigued. So I think top 10 is realistic. I think top 10, top 15 is certainly possible for FSU.
Well, how about that? Well, you're going to keep us posted. I know that much. And hang on to your seats, ladies and gents, because we're about to get to the real nitty-gritty of it as National Signing Day marches on. Michael, thank you so much, my friend.
You got it.
Hey, when we come back, little other thing, some round ball talk. Adrian Crawford, our old buddy, of course, has done basketball work for us for a long time, and now he's doing analysis for the ACC Network Extra. We'll talk to him after this. It's Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
That's great. It starts with an earthquake, birds and snakes, an airplane. Lenny Bruce is not afraid.
Darn pop-ups and video ads.
Are you wasting your time again on clickbait FSU updates that are bloated down with ads?
Yeah. And after crashing my computer, the information isn't even up to date. You're on warchant.com. What's really going on with the Seminoles?
For the real scoop, you'll need to get your own War Chant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer right now.
You know I like free. Sign me up.
Use the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Nobody has more accurate and timely information on the Noles than warchant.com.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Florida State basketball jetting in to this weekend undefeated still. Of course, a big victory over Florida on everybody's mind. The beginning of the week, I don't want to say underwhelming. I mean, anytime you almost put up 100 points, it's not really underwhelming, but a sleepwalk-like, I guess you could say, win over Loyola, Maryland. And now Tulane up on the docket. That's going to be noon Sunday at the Donald L. Tucker Center. It's time to bring in, because we haven't had a chance to with all the coaching search and all that going back and forth, our old pal Adrian Crawford, who, of course, has been a longtime basketball analyst for warchant.com and now doing some color, doing some analysis for the ACC Network Extra, calling Florida State basketball games. Adrian, my friend, it's so good to have you back.
What's going on, sir? How you been?
I'm just fine, buddy, and I know you've been fine looking at all this. This has been one heck of a month for Florida State basketball that even you, Adrian, and I know so sometimes we can look at Florida State basketball a little rosier than others, but even you, my friend, have to admit you didn't see this coming.
You know what, man? I didn't see it coming to the level, especially how they played against Florida. You know, that was kind of been the thing for me is that, man, how they stepped out against Florida. I did not expect that against Florida. Is a very good basketball team. Man, we just came in there, man, punched them in the mouth and just dominated. I mean, from beginning to end. So I would tell you I didn't expect that to happen against Florida. I knew this team would be pretty good. I knew they would be a better team. it's the whole thing, addition by subtraction. I knew they'd be a better team, but losing that type of talent that they lost, I knew that would be hard as well. But when it's all said and done, you've got to give credit. I mean, listen, you can't just keep, people can say that Leonard Hamilton is just a recruiter or the staff is just recruiters, but you got to give these guys credit that they can coach basketball. I mean, the game plan they had against Florida, Mike White and his staff had literally no adjustments to make. And that goes to Dennis Gates and Charles Young, all those guys who prep for the games, man. Again, people got to start giving Leonard Hamilton his credit. The man can coach basketball.
You hit the nail on the head with addition by subtraction. I don't necessarily think there's a lottery pick on this year's team, obviously losing Jonathan Isaac. I do think MJ Walker's an incredibly impressive player, and there's been a couple other guys that have flashed some really good basketball skills this year as well. But I think what you see with this team is even more so than last year, and we talked about it a lot last year, Adrian, this team is very, very good playing with each other. They're very, very comfortable with everyone's roles, and you can tell they all just like to be there. They like to play basketball, and more than anything, I feel like you can talk about game plans all you want for Leonard Hamilton and his staff. I think the true job of Leonard Hamilton and his staff is they've done a great job getting this team motivated when it comes to big games, when it comes to getting things done. They looked like they wanted to be there at Rutgers. They certainly looked like they wanted to be there at the O-Dome. And I caught something on their door before, or on that video, when they had that locker room celebration at Florida. And if you haven't seen that video, by the way, wow, you want to talk about a room of happy guys. There's a sign on their door, Adrian, when they walk out and take the floor, start unknown, finish unforgettable. And I think you can see that DNA in this team. They want to be remembered, and Leonard Hamilton picked the right button to push, and that a lot of people doubted this team and counted it out because of what they lost.
Yeah, and yes, 100%. I think that with this team, they just came in with a chip on their shoulder. I mean, you got to think about this. Last year, you had the Boom Squad, and, you had one of the best benches in college basketball, and you had those guys all returning, but everyone said that they're not good. And so you have one of the best benches in America on that last year. But then all these guys are returning, and then the level of disrespect, I think that really they gave to him. I mean, they gave to, I say them, Coach Hamilton, they gave to their team. I mean, like some publications, 12th in the ACC. It was just this thing. I get it because, you lose Isaac, you lose Bacon, you lose Rattan Mays. But this group just had a chip on their shoulder. And again, when I keep saying giving credit to Coach Hamilton and his staff, is that, listen, they develop players. They flat out develop players. You've got right now, Phil Kofer. You see the emergence of him and how much he's gotten better. All those guys have gotten better as players. And again, this team has something to prove. And so in the summer, these guys got in the gym. They got better because they wanted to let the world know that it just wasn't because of the three guys that were there that left to go to the NBA. But this group had something to prove.
And I think you mentioned it, the guys that were on that bench, the guys who were more the quote-unquote role players on this team have gotten so much better. And one guy in particular that sticks out in my head, and I know you probably know exactly who I'm going for. Over the last couple games, Adrian, C.J. Walker has played like a man possessed. What has been so much better in his game that allows him to just take these games over and get these shots in huge, crucial moments in basketball games?
C.J., and like I've said on Twitter, CJ, Phil Kofer, they're on my all-street fight team. They're the all-bar fight team. If you're in a fight, those are the dudes you want because he's just a tough kid. And I think what happened to him as a freshman, it's like any freshman, you come in, you're a dominant guy in high school to then trying to find your role. And a guy like CJ, he's got a chip on his shoulder with how he plays. And so even last year, CJ thought he's one of the, the thing about him, he thought he was one of the best players on the team. He thought he should be taking big shots all the time. And then having to adjust like that as a freshman. But what he did was that, to the credit of Coach Charles Young and Dennis Gates, they just really spent time with him. He continued to get better shooting the basketball. But more than anything else, C.J. Walker is just the type of kid. He just wants to win, and he's willing to put it on his shoulders. Like, he just wants to win, and he wants to put it on his shoulders. He wants to be that guy that you can depend on. He's willing to take those shots. He's willing to guard the toughest player. He's willing to be a guy where, you know what, he needs to get his team going. He's willing to get his team going. And so, man, he has been incredible. He's really leading. Again, I couldn't be more proud of a player in his development than C.J. Walker.
Another guy, and you already mentioned him, that you really look at this year and you go, wow. I was one of many, many people who wrote off Phil Kofer after last season. Of course, just did not look like he had what it took at this level after that injury. But now you can tell he's fully healthy and he's ready to go. And he has been a spark plug for Florida State on both sides of the floor. And I got to say, it's something that, like I said off the top, nobody really saw coming outside of maybe a couple people inside that building.
No, Phil Kofer has just improved drastically. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think it was the injury. But we also have to be true, too, is that we didn't know if Phil Kofer could really develop into a stretch four. The game has gone to where, man, you got to be able to shoot, pass, and dribble from those 4 spots on the floor. And Phil Kofer has put himself in the gym. I mean, I saw up there this summer. I mean, that kid was in the gym every single day. I think he worked out 6 days a week, took 1 day off, twice a day, and he just got better. And again, it's a prime example of a guy who got healthy, but he trusted the process with the coaching staff, and he just got better. And he's shooting the ball at a high clip. And here's the other thing, too. He is doing things simply. He's not trying to do too much. He plays hard. He makes open shots. I mean, again, he's worked on his catching a mid-post face up, and man, he's just gotten better. And again, what you want to see a player do is actually do the stuff that they work on when they're working out in the summer in their individual workouts. I always tell players, don't turn the game to your individual workout. Don't work on stuff you've never done before. That's not the time you bring it out for the show. Is when you in a live game action. And he was working on that stuff all summer long, and we saw the improvement.
Let's talk a little bit about the new guys now. There's been a lot of talk about MJ Walker, but some of the other fresh faces, what do you feel like they've brought to the table?
First, you got to start with, I think you definitely have to start with Ike Obiagu, who just is, Coach Hamilton, he's got that, you're always going to have the African players coming in. He's got the African connection, and I think this guy, maybe besides Solomon Alabi, is probably the most far-along big African big that we've ever had here. I mean, I'm watching him, and I mean, he is going to be a special player. I mean, the last three games, he's had 3 blocks. 3 blocks in the last 3. In each game, he's had at least 3 blocks. I mean, he's averaging almost 3 blocks a game. And he's added so much to this team, again, especially with the idea that you have Chris Kumazi out right now with the foot injury, and he's getting valuable minutes. I think he has been tremendous this year.
Finally, let's talk about the rest of out-of-conference play. It's been a long time since FSU's been able to run the full gauntlet. But right now, you look and listen, this is nothing against Tulane or Charleston Southern or any of the other out-of-conference teams on the schedule. The only real big-name marquee game that Florida State has left out of conference, Adrian, is next Saturday, Orange Bowl Classic against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And Oklahoma State is not the typical Cowpokes team. This is not a team that's going to be in the top 25 all year. They don't exactly have that wow factor. Would you be comfortable in saying if they get past the Pokes, they're going to go undefeated and out of conference play?
Yeah, I do. I think they will, and I think that's their goal. I think their goal is to come in to playing Duke, and they're undefeated. I think that is, you go into ACC play undefeated, matching up against the best team in the country. And I think you couldn't have a better showdown or desire a better showdown or a better matchup than that. So I think that's, during the season, you got to give your team small goals and victories. And I think right now with this group, it is absolutely that. It is to go into that Duke game undefeated. And I think they can. I mean, I was watching some film actually today of Tulane. And again, Tulane going into the North Carolina game, I think at that point in time, they may have been 5-1, 6-1, got handed to them by a North Carolina team. Now, they got to be ready to play a Tulane team because the Tulane team, as I was watching them, they're big, they're athletic, a tough team. But when it's all said and done, I mean, we're better. So I think if they play Florida State basketball, continue to stick with the things that they need to do, then I think they definitely go into the Duke game undefeated, and I think that makes up for an incredible matchup.
I'd tend to say so as well. It's maybe not quite as long of a stretch. Of course, the 6-game stretch that Florida State had to start conference play last year, Adrian, was unprecedented, and the fact that Florida State was able to leave it with a winning record, I think, set the tone for the rest of the year. But Florida State's got about as tough of a 3-game start to an ACC play as you're going to look. On the road at Duke, and then, of course, home at Carolina, and then you have to go and play the Miami Hurricanes for one of your 2 bouts against them. the sands of the ACC have shifted a little bit, Adrian. Georgia Tech's not quite the team that we thought they were going to be this year. Louisville, of course, without Rick Pitino, somewhat in limbo. NC State's trying to get things together under a new coach. Syracuse is Syracuse in that they're pretty good, but they can certainly be beaten if you're a good jump shooting team, which Florida State, compared to years past, most certainly is. And, of course, Notre Dame, who's in the top 10, showed that they're a little bit vulnerable when they dropped one to Ball State this week. So I was one of those people going into the season. I thought Florida State is around an 8-9 team in the ACC. They're probably going to get about an 8-9 seed in the tournament, and that'll be just fine for them. But I think my expectations have shifted a little bit to where I don't see why this team can't be the 5th or 6th best team in the ACC. What do you feel like conference play, and what do you feel like as far as where this team can go nationally is the ceiling for this squad right now?
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, Duke is good. Duke is good this year. I mean, I think they're cut above anybody in the ACC right now. I
think they're cut above anybody in the country.
Cut above anybody in the country. But here's the thing. I actually think Notre Dame's good. Again, with Farrell and Bonzie Colson, I mean, those two guys are very good, very, very good basketball players. But if you look at it, who else? I mean, and this is, again, I mean, I know what you're saying, man. We can be middle of the pack, but I'm watching this right now, and we go to a Florida team who's pretty good. I know they dropped to Loyola last night, but the Florida team is pretty good.
They can score.
They can score. They handle this, and there's a great game against Duke until Duke just started pounding the ball inside. And again, when you got the best, you got the best player in the country, number 1 draft pick, then you're gonna, and one of the best players we've seen in a long time in college basketball, you're gonna be all right. But the issue is this Florida State team, I just don't see anybody like if they continue to play the way they play. But size, I'm being honest with you, but size Duke and Notre Dame, like, I don't see anybody better. Carolina's not very good to me watching them this year. I think Joel Berry's good, and they're going to be Carolina. But overall, like, Carolina's not a team where I'm like, man, they're just overrushing better. And I think what makes it tough with our team is that because there's no perennial, like, oh, man, we have a like you said earlier, a first-round lottery pick, we just got really good college basketball players. And I think, let me tell you this. Talked to a couple of NBA scouts. Terrence Mann's name is really starting to be something that people are talking about because he is playing out. I mean, like I've always told you, he's a jump shot away from being Jimmy Butler. And that guy is playing at a very high level. I just think we're very good. I mean, and it's not just me being, us being Florida State guys. I just don't see anybody like teams that we're mentioning, we're talking about, that's better than we are.
And I think you're absolutely right when it comes to Terrence Mann, the one guy we haven't really got to talk about in this, and he's definitely become more of a floor general, and you can see it. He's a guy who takes games over. He drives in the lane. He seemed like an and one machine over the last 17 days, but that jump shot, that's the one thing that still concerns me about him, man. And I saw it at Florida. I saw it 2 days ago on Wednesday when we watched that basketball game, when there's just that open look and there's just always the pump. Like, that's the thing, is that there's the hesitation to it, too. There's always the pump and then the no thank you. And I feel like if you are a team that is scouting somebody on film, you have to know that's on everybody's film. It's circled in bold letters. He's going to pump and drive.
He is. But the thing that he does is this, though, is that he is just he's just so strong as a basketball player. He's strong as a basketball player. He can finish. And, again, it's coming. But it's kind of like, think about this. Again, he's nowhere near like LeBron James. But you know what LeBron's going to do. With that body and that tank, he's coming downhill. Terrence Mann is a strong physical player. And what's going to happen is this. And he plays. The one thing I love, and I kind of put this on Twitter, one thing he does, and he plays above his chest when he picks that ball up. When he puts the ball on the deck and he picks up, he's playing above his chest, which allows people, they can't slap at the ball. They can't hit him. He blows through contact. And he's one of the best drivers in America. he can just get he can get to a spot. And it's coming. But, again, think about guys like, Tony Parker, guys like LeBron James, guys we know not great jump shooters. But, man, when they put the ball on the deck, it's coming. You just can't stop it.
That's fair enough, my friend. So, that being said, Florida State's got a game on Sunday at high noon against Tulane. That's a tip-off at the Donald L. Tucker Center. Adrian, thanks as always. We will certainly be talking to you a lot sooner than we have throughout this last little bit. Talk to you soon, my friend.
Look forward to talking to you guys.
That does it for us, everybody. Thanks to Adrian, Michael, Drew, and everybody for listening. Gullick and Wingo's up next, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
War WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.